Hi Tina, my name is Ellen and I'll be correcting this set of essays for you. Let's take a look at what you've written. The first one is a task one about animals used for animal testing. Let's see what you said. The data tells us information about the percentage of 6 species arranged for animal testing in the United States. Generally speaking, it can be clearly seen that rabbits and hamsters were the most categories to be undergone the animal experiments in America. All right, so let's look at this a little bit. I absolutely agree with having an introduction and then following that with an overview. Personally, it's the organization that I like to see most. However, I'm finding some errors with your grammar and also with your vocabulary. So I want to look at those two paragraphs again a little more closely to correct some of the errors. So this is okay, the data tells us information, that's fine. The data tells us information about the percentages of 6 species. I wouldn't say arranged, but I would have maybe said used for animal testing in the United States. You messed up your typing and wrote a D instead of an S. Another thing that you could have done is instead of just telling us the data, you can tell us what form that data takes. So you could have mentioned that this is a pie chart. So ideally, this would have read, the pie chart tells us information about the percentages of 6 species used for animal testing in the United States. And this should be generally, LLY here, speaking. It can be clearly seen that rabbits and hamsters were the animals most used in animal experiments in America. All right, not the most categories. That's the wrong word here. And this was also awkward, to be undergone. So it should have just been, were the animals most used, or you could have said, were the most used animals in experiments in America. That would have been okay. All right, let's move on. Looking at the specific data, it is interesting that rabbits were the most favorable choice, with around 39% to be selected to be a subject of the animal experiments. In contrast, sheep was the least favorable species, with only approximately 5%. According to the pie chart, the second suitable, and I don't really agree with this word suitable here. We don't know this, as well as favorable. We don't know, in fact, that these animals were suitable or that they were favorable. We just know that they were the most used. I don't know if that makes sense. In other words, it's very possible that, say, for example, pigs were the most favorable. In other words, the best all around for their purposes. So that's what we would mean here by favorable or by suitable. However, for cost reasons or for, other reasons, they chose a different animal. So you have to be careful with this language because you could potentially be making comments about things that you just don't have information about. Okay, so let's try that again. It is interesting that rabbits were the most used choice. You could have said that. With around 39% selected as subjects of animal experiments. Now, why did I do that? I'm cleaning it up here. Look what you've got. To be selected, to be a subject. It just becomes a little heavy, a little clunky with a lot of these words. So if we clean up that grammar, it flows better, it becomes more fluid, and it reads overall far better. In contrast, sheep was the least, again, I would say used here. Let's see what they've used here. Okay, so sheep was the least used species with only approximately 5%. According to the pie chart, the second most common experimental animal group, okay, I don't know about this, was obviously identified. I don't understand why you've used this term here. I would get rid of this. I would have just said the second most common experimental animal was hamsters, representing around a quarter. Okay. The result of the addition of the proportion of rabbits and hamsters was over half of the whole selected species, with roughly 65%. This, again, is a little clunky. I'll explain to you what I mean in just a minute. I want to finish the rest of this. The remaining 3 species, including dogs, pigs, and primates, saw similar proportions, with each of them representing around 1/10. Get rid of this of here. Okay, so this is a pie chart with very little information. It only has 6 pieces of information. And what I have found in the years that I've been teaching IELTS and examining for IELTS is that people have usually people have more trouble with these types of charts than they do with the types of charts that have lots of information about it. You see, they just don't know what to do with them. Now, you may have noticed that I kind of cleaned up some of your language, and if we had done this in a written format, you would have probably been under the recommended 150-word minimum. And one of the reasons why that would have happened is, well, you would have had a better reading task 1, but you would have been under that 150 words. You needed, in my opinion, to go into a little more detail here. We group like this when we have a lot of information. Okay, and when we have a lot of information, we are kind of forced to group in order to provide kind of overall images, not to kind of burden the reader with too much detail. But here, when you only have 6 pieces of information, it is really in your best interest to kind of highlight it and to go into maybe some depth about it. So while I like what you did here, saying that these 2 represented 65%, I think you should have said that these 3 groups together are approximately equal to the second highest. Okay, so in other words, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th highest percentages altogether are roughly similar to that of the second highest. So making connections like that, I think, makes this more meaningful and really kind of showing us what this is all about. I would have rephrased this a little bit. So not the result of the addition of the proportion, et cetera, et cetera. I would have said together with rabbits, the top 2 most used animals represented more than half, with roughly 65%. So I would have phrased it a little differently. But yeah, I think you really did yourself a disservice by only having this one little sentence for essentially half the data in the chart. I mean, like I said, you had 6 pieces of information and you talked about half of that information in just one little sentence. So that wasn't such a good idea. And that's going to affect your task achievement score. Okay. So, and I also mentioned that there were some errors with grammar that I wanted you to look at, as well as vocabulary. So you've got the right idea, but it does need work, and it does need some extension and some more accuracy. Now let's take a look at your task 2. Let's see what you've got here. This is about changing jobs or staying in the same job. Let's see what you've said. The importance of working in one's field and our career development has been planned. I don't know what that means, actually. After our graduation in our modern society. All right, what does this mean? The importance of working in one's field and our career development. I don't understand this sentence. What do you mean it has been planning? The importance has been planning and our career development has been planning? Maybe. I don't really understand this. I'm sorry. It's not particularly coherent, so I'm having a hard time understanding what you're trying to say here. So let's just go on then. Commonly, most of us would prefer to have a work-life balance environment in our lives. People have even argued that workers would be better to participate in the same company for their whole lives, and I tend to agree with them. All right. So I didn't understand the first sentence, as I've already said. I don't agree with this inclusion of work-life balance. That's not what this is about at all. That's a totally different topic. So this sentence is completely irrelevant. And let me tell you something else. If I didn't have this in front of me, if I didn't have the task in front of me and I was just reading your essay and I was just reading this introduction, I would not be able to kind of guess what this essay is about. A good introduction should make me be able to say, oh, okay, I imagine that the essay topic was something like this. This is probably what you received. I should be able to do that with a well-written introduction. And I cannot do that here. You've got a lot of different things, a lot of different elements that have no relation to each other, and they don't have relation to the task. So check it out. This is about our field and the planning after our graduation. Then here you're talking about work-life balance. And then here you're talking about working in the same company. So these sentences have nothing to do with one another, and it's only the last one that has anything to do with the task itself. So it definitely needs some work here. Let's see. You have this little paragraph here. I'm not really sure why. We must expand our understanding of what elements are essential for beneficial for our career development. For instance, loyalty plays an important role in determining how much money and increment the employee can learn from the company. Okay. This paragraph for me should have just been completely left out because it's just not appropriate task to organization. You see, we typically recommend a 4-paragraph structure where you've got an introduction, you've got a conclusion, and then in between you've got 2 body paragraphs. This essentially is just 2 sentences. So what's the central idea? Because each paragraph needs to have a central idea that somehow connects back to one of the elements of the task. And so here I don't agree with this inclusion at all. If it's so important, then it needs to belong in one of your 2 main body paragraphs. You need to somehow assimilate it into the paragraphs. And if it's not that important, or if it doesn't fit in, then maybe you should just leave it out, which is probably what I would suggest. So here you're talking about the elements successful or essential for our career, and then you're saying loyalty. And this doesn't belong anywhere, okay? So let's move on. In today's day and age, people's knowledge and familiarity of one's working field in the company is to play a significant role on how well the company to be developed by his or her contribution. All right. I'm going to clean this up grammatically. Let me see if I can try to do it. Nowadays, an employee's knowledge of his or her working field plays a major role in how well the company grows with his contribution. I mean, that's kind of what you're saying, but you can see it sounds, even with my rephrasing, it sounds a little awkward. So what you're saying is one's knowledge of one's field plays a role in how the company grows with his contribution. It sounds a little funny, okay? So it's not really one's knowledge, it's one's contribution that plays a role in how well the company develops. So it's just a little strange. It is not hyperbole to say that we cannot work out a project by his or her effort. For example, let us focus on the business field. Perhaps the employees develop his or her field in a company for over 20 to 30 years. He or she may have not only establishing the friendly relationship with the colleagues, but also having a numerous social networks among his or her partnerships. It would be beneficial for the growth of the company revenue and the business development in terms of increasing the number of customers or business partners. Okay. There isn't a central idea that is clear in this paragraph, Tina, that is linked back to the task. So I can't say, just reading this paragraph, oh, okay, here Tina is talking to me about the benefits of staying in the same company for one's entire career. It's just not clear. Okay, so for example, I didn't understand what this meant. It is not hyperbole to say that we cannot work out a project. I didn't understand that. What does that have to do with staying in the same company for your entire career? Okay, so I don't know if there's some sort of misunderstanding of the task, or if I'm not really sure what you're trying to say here. Okay, now here you mentioned something about 20 to 30 years. Let's see what you're saying here. For example, let us focus on the business field. Perhaps the employees develop in this field in a company. Okay, and then he or she may have not only established friendly relationships with colleagues, but also numerous social networks among partnerships. Therefore, it would be beneficial for the growth of the company and the business. Okay. Now, I don't know where you came to this conclusion. I'm trying to understand that this is about staying in the same company for 20 to 30 years, because this seems to be the key kind of feature here. So great. We have friendly relationships. We have relationships with our business colleagues. So how does this help the company revenue? And why does this mean that the person should do this? Like for the person, him or herself, why should they stay in the company? So there's really not a lot here that relates back to the topic, okay? Let's go to your next paragraph. In terms of employees' fringe benefits, there should be an S here, and there should be an S apostrophe, not an apostrophe S. People working in the same company may earn more money and staff benefits with an S from the company in comparison to one working for a period of time in a company and then switching to another. It can be easily imagined that he or she may be entitled to a high level of salary, not increment, when the person has been working for 20 years or above. Okay. Due to the employee's valuable experience, contribution, well, decide, is it experience that's valuable or contribution? You can't have both. Due to the employee's valuable experience in one company, he or she is willing to contribute even more in the working area to gain more job satisfaction for the daily work. Okay. So this too, I don't understand how this connects back. So essentially, I have a lot of experience, and so you're assuming that I'm willing to contribute more to gain more job satisfaction. I didn't understand that, because the previous things you were saying was about how many benefits I get. So if I stay in a company for a long time, I'll get more benefits, I'll get more salary, I might get promoted. So then why are we then talking about my valuable experience allows me to get more job satisfaction? That doesn't seem to relate to anything that you just talked about. Okay, so let's move on. To conclude, participating in the same job for our lives is seemingly more beneficial, is the word you want here, than the other view. Okay, this is a little strange, because as far as I could tell from this essay, you didn't talk about the other view. Okay, so I don't understand why you're talking about it here in your conclusion. Not matter on the person's own fringe benefit or the company's business development may have a concerned growth. All right, this sentence is a little incoherent. I'm having a hard time understanding what this means. So not matter on the person's own fringe benefit. I don't understand that, I'm afraid. So a lot of this needs to be reworked, Tina. It needs to be more grammatically accurate so that your viewpoint can come across. This was pretty clear, even though this was supposed to be beneficial and not benefit. We understand, so we can draw a conclusion, but a lot of this is just incoherent, and that's going to create a problem, okay? So I really need you to work on some of your grammar, and also making sure that you have a central idea. So just one major idea in each paragraph. So here I'm going to talk about the benefits of staying in one job for your entire life. Here I'm going to talk about why it's in your best interest to change jobs. And then that will make it more correctly developed. Okay? All right. So keep writing, correct these, and let's see more work from you. All right? Good luck.